I'm going to dive in. Our first section is on overcoming obstacles and pivotal moments. I'll maybe start with you, Noralee, if you could tell us, being in a leadership position often comes with many challenges and hurdles that eventually may lead to great triumphs. Over the course of your journey to leadership, was there a pivotal moment that you can reflect on that helped you come into your own as a leader?
Yeah, thank you, Nutrien. I think the one that sticks out, and I think there's many in a course of a 30-year career, but one of the pivotal moments, I think, was in that second chapter of my career, where by all accounts, I was in a very comfortable position. I had succeeded at the firm that I had joined and made partner. I had support and sponsorship and great clients, great work. I was enjoying it. But I think I felt like I got complacent. I wasn't sure, how much more development would be available. And frankly, I was in a big firm, and I wanted to be more impactful. So I took a chance, and it was a challenge, a step out. I left all the goodwill that I had built up, I think, internally, and moved to a new firm, a smaller firm that had a growth opportunity, growth mindset. What that did for me, I think, and how it was pivotal from a leadership role was, the business was the easy part. The clients and the transactions were still there. What I had to do is build a new team, both building relationships vertically, upstream, and maybe most importantly, I had to build a team that would support the practice and the transactions. So, and it allowed me to think about how to build a team, how to inspire people to want to work with you and on your files, and building a brand and being more strategic about what your network is. That tested me, and frankly, it was a pivotal moment because I learned that challenge and development go hand in hand, and it put me on a sort of lifelong journey of being courageous and curious about what that next opportunity would be. So it was important from developing a team. I focused on how that challenge provided a growth opportunity for me in my development. And frankly, it helped me define success. I didn't seek perfection in that new role. I set meaningful milestones and targets for my expectations, and I met some of them. I didn't meet all of them, but I was certainly, it helped me accept that to see success, it didn't need to be perfection. So that was one of the pivotal moments, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that. Without challenge, you won't develop. That's a wonderful piece of advice. Joanne, how about you? What's a pivotal moment in your career that you'd like to share?
At first, I have to say, Noralee and I did not compare notes on this, but I'm already hearing similar themes, although I always learn more about Noralee every time I hear her speak at these sort of things. But for me, I was reflecting back, and again, there's a number you could pick, but I chose one where it was the first time I was given a leadership opportunity outside the practice of law. So I had been VP legal for a Canadian division of a big company, and we merged with one of the global majors. And in the course of that aftermath of a merger, they actually created a job for me. There wasn't room for me in legal, but they wanted to keep me. So they gave me a job as general manager of EH&S, responsible for regulatory and consultation, Aboriginal affairs, a lot of things that were things I had touched as a lawyer, but had not had primary responsibility for. So again, I leapt at the chance because I saw it as an opportunity to grow personally. And I think it was only in the living with that I realized how much it was challenging my leadership skills, because when you are the leader of a group where you share subject matter expertise, that's easier to lead. People see you as having the credibility to be the leader of the group. But when I'm suddenly going into a group of people some were older than me, some had, I didn't have experience with the Aboriginal, other than growing up where I did in Saskatchewan, but, that's not my personal background. So there was so much to learn and so many different perspectives to take on board. But I think that's where you do grow tremendously as a leader when you're forced to take stock of what is it I can bring to this team? What is it they need from me? Having that energy and confidence that you'll find it together. And it really does cause you to think differently about what is a leader, to step out of your comfort zone. So I think that again, it was one where it wasn't an obvious career path to take that diversion, but it has certainly made me a stronger, executive leader and participant at the executive table where I am now, having had that opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you. Let's talk about friendship and your lifelong friendship. How has this impacted your career specifically? And, maybe you could tell us how important friendship is when you are considering your professional settings, and how creating close bonds in the professional world may benefit you or impact you. So, Joanne, do you want to kick us off on this one?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Noralee's been my rock in many ways over the years. I think we have a deep understanding of each other. But we also have an ability to be very clear that now we're in professional mode if she's advising me on a legal file versus friend mode. So we've always had this ability to be very clear with each other about the kind of support we're looking for at particular times. But, I think that staying connected with the people that you grow up with, the people that are your peer group as you move through your career, is just so important. You need to have that comfortable place to share who you are, that understands your challenges, because I do think, as Noralee referenced before, sometimes the work seems like the easy part, and it's the human dynamics of trying to understand and navigate that corporate environment that you're in. The EQ and testing. Well, what did this mean, or what would you do with this situation? It was just so valuable to have that deep sense of trust. But I do firmly believe there's a Covey saying that business moves at the speed of trust. And I firmly believe that to be true, that if you have relationships already built at the time you need to lean on them, you can actually advance the conversation so much quicker. And I have really stressed relationships throughout my whole career. And in fact, through this period of COVID, where we've been stuck behind screens, I've been randomly reaching out to general counsels at my peer groups, my peer companies, where I didn't already know them, to say, let's meet for a coffee, because I don't know where you are. I've got availability because I'm not on a plane, and it's actually been a very effective way to build my network over this past year. So I always strongly encourage people to think about relationships, and relationship building is a key part of business.
So, Joanne, can you maybe dive a little deeper into how other female relationships that you may have had in your professional career, and how females or women can support other women?
Did you want me to pitch that to Nora, or?
I was going to let you keep going and then go over to Noralee and just get her take on it.
Oh, sure. I think that, there's this depth of understanding of the challenges that we had. I think especially in the years when we were contemplating motherhood and then young mothers, there's just a sense of understanding that you could draw on from your group of female friends. Not to say that the men in our worlds didn't equally parent and had strong connections there as well, but it's just a little bit different. And I think that there's a rapport that we had. I mean, there's still a strong group of women general counsels here in Calgary. They actually did a book on it because there were so many of us at one time, and what was the phenomenon that created this cadre of strong female leadership in the legal community of Calgary and the energy business in particular. So I welcome it and I value it. I'm not exactly sure why it was that way, but I do know that we got a lot of deals done. I think we negotiated hard, but always left feeling like it was a fair outcome, and friends afterwards. So I think it's been just a tremendous part of my whole career.
How about you, Noralee? How has friendship impacted your career?
Yeah, and not to cover the same things, but it does provide a safe zone for mentorship, I think, for sure. It's a safe, Switzerland type space to test issues you might be dealing with that are of the more people or political nature, as Joanne mentioned. But I'll touch maybe on the sponsorship side, which is, using those professional and personal relationships to be quite intentional about how you might be able to garner sponsorship or business opportunities. And this was not, certainly I can look across a number of other female graduates from the University of Saskatchewan that became, a really big part of my clientele. And so they became my sponsors. But it started by, thinking about intentionally, how can we support each other? How can I help them with whatever problems they were dealing with in their business? And it was mutual support. And certainly that was an important part of the professional and personal relationships that you build when you're in your university years. And then as you're coming out and starting your career, look around and be intentional about how you could find those mutual win-win situations. So be mentors, be a network opportunity, be a sponsor. What I say now is that there's a lot of people, as Joanne mentioned, they're in a position of buying power. They make the choices on who to provide business opportunities to. And so we should be providing that support and sponsorship when there is that mutual ability to support each other. And, I never took that for granted, that benefit of the professional relationships that you have. Someone said to me once that maybe women tend to shy away from using their friendships in a business world because it seems, they don't want to disrupt the friendship. And I would say that whenever I worked with my colleagues, my friends, I worked my butt off. It would just you never want to disappoint them. And so, you look for places to mutually support each other. And now, again, in my position, it's about looking around and providing, fair opportunities for the women in your network to have the opportunity to, use your, for myself to use a buying power or the business opportunities and spread it around.
Thank you. What I took away or what I heard, I really like this notion of intentionality, you said. So be intentional about your supports and be intentional in your network and mutually look for mutual benefit. It's good. Thank you. I'm going to move now to finding your superpower. I have heard you talk about finding your superpower at work, and I'm going to start by first asking each of you what that means and what does finding your superpower mean to you. But you've also noted that your superpower is something that is better judged by those around you as opposed to yourself. So I don't want you to tell me what your superpower is. I'm going to get each of you to tell what the other one's is. But first, Noralee, what does that mean to you? What does finding your superpower mean?
Yeah, thank you. It's just kind of a fun name, but really what it is about, your particular unique skill or talent. What do other people think that you bring to the table? It's something special to your contribution, and it's connected to your brand. I think it's how do people think about you? And without, I think if you don't have an understanding of what that superpower is or what people judge that you bring to the table, you might be lulled into thinking you're just another cog in the wheel. That there's, why are you at the table? I think if you define and understand what people think are your unique talents, that makes you a lot more effective when you're at that table, because you realize what other people want from you at that table. So that's how I see it. And Joanne, I don't know if you want to stop there and give your perspective, or do I carry on and describe what I think Joanne's superpower is?
Joanne, do you have anything to add in terms of what a superpower is? And then we'll switch to what yours is.
Yeah, well, I think it's, I think Noralee said it very well. I think the only thing I would add is that I just find it a very empowering way to think about the phrase know thyself. We focus a lot on blind spots as leaders. We have, executive coaches and 360s, and often it's focusing on the blind spots. But we also need to build up our strengths and really draw and know those strengths. And what do people count on you for? So I like the way Noralee said that. And I do think the best leaders are those who are very self-aware. So I think this is part of that. Acknowledge your strengths, and maybe that's something we need to be encouraging young women to be more forthcoming about, is know and acknowledge and build on your strengths.
Okay, what's Noralee's superpower, Joanne?
Wow, I've been waiting for this. Well, there's so many. Where to start? I think, first of all, you meet Noralee, immediately she just radiates energy. She's like a little nuclear fission device of her own. She brings so much energy. She's the person that lights up a room. So, you can count on her to be bringing that energy to anything she takes on. And you've heard it so many times already. She's very deliberate. And she said to me once, she would never take something on, whether even it's a charitable commitment or a fundraising request, or she would never take anything on if she didn't feel she could deliver it to the best of her ability. I always really admired that about her. I also think that I'm going to give her a second related superpower, but she's got this amazing ability to draw people out. Even back in university, she had whatever conversation she was in, down at Louis or whatever, it was always the most interesting conversation in the room, or at least appeared to be. And I think that's because she's got this tremendous ability to draw people out. She gets people talking, and that's how she builds relationships. She's just this charismatic person, but the charisma lies in drawing people out and asking great questions. And that's the best tool that a leader has.
Ah, Louise, Joanne, Louise, I miss it so much.
I'm dating myself, am I? Is it's
No,
still
it
there? But
exists. Still exists.
Still there. It's just COVID restricted, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Noralee, what do you think of that, of what Joanne says, and what's her superpower?
Yeah, and remember what Joanne, like we knew we would be assessing each other's superpower, but we certainly didn't share. So I didn't know what she was going to say. She doesn't know what I'm going to say. So, but it's always, I think, super revealing. And that's why it's so important to have someone else sort of give you that perspective, because it may be very different than what you assess as your superpower. And so, because it's about your influence, it's important to know how others see your most important qualities. So it's it's refreshing, and I think it does give you a boost of confidence. So for Joanne, alluding a little bit to her own assessment of her career and what made those particular pivotal moments. I would say that she is someone that challenges the status quo, and she's very insightful beyond sort of what's going on currently. Her ability to see around corners or try something different or new. And you heard it, like going to Russia in the early 90s. Wow. And being able to see that opportunity for what it was. So I think that's what people really admire and want, and why she's at those tables is because she's able to sort of look past the status quo and think about what's coming. The insight that she gives is very powerful for people thinking about strategy and business opportunities. So I think that's her superpower.
Very nice. Well, those here on my team, I can't wait. I want to try this when we get back to business and assess each other's superpowers. It's a great idea, and I love the idea and the notion. And looking for that positive strengths from others. It's really helpful. So thank you for that. I want to move now to the topic of bringing your whole self to work. And I want to ask you about the importance of this. And, I acknowledge you're both mothers, you have hobbies. Joanne's been traveling the world for what seems like decades until now, of course. And you have responsibilities that, that are not work, that are your life. And I think as women, we're guilty of taking on projects and having a lot to balance in our plates. And I did note that Joanne said Noralee does not take things on when she can't commit fully. So I'd love to hear about that. And, it's important, especially today when the line between work and home is so blurred, to make time for yourself. So we'd love to hear advice on what are your best practices on this balancing act for work in your personal life. Whoever wants to start us off.
You want me to go, Joe? I can go first. Well, I would say maybe to start with why it's important. My take on that is that, it's much more beneficial to have multidimensional workplaces. And so people who do only work, just work, and don't bring sort of their other characteristics, experiences, and perspectives, if you don't have that, work is not as interesting. So I think it's important for diverse perspectives, but it also makes work a lot more fun and interesting. And so it also helps build, I refer sometimes to the trust equation that's so important. Joanne mentioned, the building blocks of trust in being a leader, and bringing your whole self to work allows people to see beyond what you're executing at work, but also what your value system is and what other things are important to you. So that helps build up that trust equation. Best practices, I've found in figuring out how do you do that? How do you have experiences so you have something to bring to work in that multidimensional space. And I would say, again, reflecting back, communicate what your priorities are to all your various stakeholders at work, at home, your friends, and maybe most importantly, yourself. Have a conversation with yourself about what's important to you. Plan to achieve. I always believe in problem solving, and that you can achieve a balance of those priorities if you plan, and then execute. And you have to reliably execute for those stakeholders. I can tell you when I realized that if I have time to spend with my kids, if I have time to work out, if I have time to enjoy some of those extracurricular activities, golf, cycling, boating, whatever it is, I perform better at work. So once I realized that, it made it a lot easier to make time for it, because I'm actually performing. If I don't do these things, I find that I wasn't giving my best performance at work. So that was sort of a inflection point for me early in my career, that I needed time for that to be the best performer.
And did you ever feel any guilt?
Oh, absolutely. I felt guilt. The best inflection point was when I realized how to suppress the guilt, especially when it came to myself. What my priorities were often left to the very end. And so I think with age, you get better at suppressing the guilt. But I also, knowing what those priorities are, allowed me to, for that particular decision, whatever you're trying to decide, you're able to prioritize at the moment. And I never beat myself up. I realized, it's on any given day, you might not be the best you can be in various aspects of your life, but if you had a plan over time, you're going to find that balance.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Joanne, how do you balance? How do you bring?
Noralee just gave me a great jumping off point because, you know, to her point that the status quo, I really don't like talking about work-life balance because it reminds me of a teeter-totter where you have to inject energy to keep it level, and it just adds stress to think that there is a balance. I have this mental model for myself where my life's a pie chart, and I have to figure out what are the important things to make sure is in that pie chart, and the size of the slices might change in time, but over time I'm going to have it all. I just won't have it all at the same time. And I know that they ebb and flow. And I think, you know, that there are certain things that are in your value system you just have to honor no matter what your circumstances are. And I think for many of us, I think for Nora and I both, it was our children, especially when they were little. And, you know, I would have a deal with my CEO that certain things, there was just certain things or certain times when I wasn't available. And man, that took some juggling sometimes. And there were certain things that didn't maybe go as well as I would have liked, but I think on the whole, I achieved that. You know, the one specific example I was going to share is that I did have to travel a lot with my job, and I had a commitment to my children that when they called me to say goodnight, I would always answer. So I was walking out of board dinners, I was walking out of all kinds of things where I said, I'll be back in 10 minutes. Nobody's going to miss me for 10 minutes or whatever it was, but it was important. I also agree with Noralee that you have to take your vacations. You have to keep yourself energized and sharp, and make sure those other things that you do for yourself, you continue to do, and find new hobbies. Keep trying new things that you enjoy, and don't ever get stagnant. You know, I think the world's full of exciting things to explore, and the world will reopen again. I hope maybe people have used this quiet time to reflect, and we'll come out of COVID just raring for new excitement and opportunities. But going back to the earlier theme of staying close to your friends, I think that's an important part of maintaining your balance too, and perspective, because it sometimes is in talking to your friends that you realize you're losing a bit of perspective too, or they'll drag you out and say, let's get out for a walk, or let's do something. You know, we know you're having a busy time, but you can at least fit that in. So I think knowing that there's people that have your best interests at heart, keep those people close. Yeah, so I think, you know, echoing a lot of the same things that Noralee had to share.
You know, I've never heard that before. Life is a pie chart. That really resonated with me. You know, I'm imagining a spreadsheet where I can code everything and then produce this beautiful pie chart to show the balance of all of the activities. I love it. That's your econ background.
That's right. That's right. I have a number of variables here and I have to fit them all in.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. Great advice. Thank you, both of you. What are some of the other elements? Let's talk about that. What are some of the other elements that you have in your life? So I heard golf, I heard cycling. Joanne, you said keep lots of varied interests. Tell us more about, we want to see a little bit of the inside world. So I'll start with you, Joanne, if you have some, if you're willing to share.
Yeah, no, well, I grew up in a small town of Saskatchewan too. I'll give a shout out to Bean Fate, Saskatchewan. And I had a dog growing up, but through the busy part of my career, I didn't have time for dogs. So now I have time for dogs again. So those of you that know, we had to delay this event. I did break my arm walking my dog. Rather embarrassing, but so now I'm very engaged in training and raising dogs. I still like to explore the world. I love languages. I speak a little bit of Russian because of my time there. I decided I was going to learn Bulgarian, which I speak with a Russian accent, and now I want to learn German. So in terms of my charitable work, I'm very committed to children and children's mental health, and so that's my one of my charitable boards is working with health services here in Calgary, and also, as I mentioned, the O'Brien Institute, which is focused on continued delivery of and a strong Canadian public health service. How do we continue to make it better and robust and supporting the research that we do here in Canada. So that's been very, very exciting insights into what's happening in the medical community. I could talk for an hour just on that. It's quite fun.
Oh, thank you. What kind of dogs?
I have, my first one is, he's a 100-pound puppy, Bernese Pyrenees cross, and the other one is a German Shepherd Marama.
Oh, nice. So little dogs. No,
Little dogs.
100 pounds. Wow. Noralee, what about you? Tell us a little more about those other areas outside of work that you enjoy.
Yeah, I think, again, similar to Joanne, I have two dogs, and they are a big part of the get out of the house and give a break on whatever is going on in the work world. So dog walks are really important for our two black Labrador retrievers. So we have two dogs as well. And I would say also, when we were in an ability to travel, we would often take trips, not always long trips, but we certainly felt like we explored a lot of interesting places, both in Canada, North and the US, and in Europe when it was open. So we love travel. And like I said, we would sometimes take trips. People would wonder, why would you go there for 4 days? But you manage within the time frames that you have. And then, as Joanne also mentioned, it's a common themes here. Lots of time with the United Way, and now moving to Saskatoon, and I'm on the STARS board. So learning a lot about aviation and critical care, which is those are two whole new buckets for me. And in my spare time, I tend to kind of a geek. I don't read fictional novels. I'm more of the business strategist. I read business books or self-help books. So it's a bit of a weird thing. Not really into the fictional stuff. So
Oh, I can relate. Any book tips? What's your favorite? What would you, if you were to identify one for our audience here today, what's one of your favorite self-help business books?
well, I love Good to Great. So Jim Collins, love Good to Great. I've read it more than once. I also recently have been a big proponent of a book by Adam Grant called Give and Take. And it's really about the art of networking, and really kind of turns the perspective around about how to be a good networker. And so it's Give and Take. I'd highly recommend it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for that. Joanne, how about you?
For business books, the one that I keep on my desk that I refer to every once in a while and like to remind myself of is the Stephen Covey book on, now I can't remember the title, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yes.
I just thought that was such a game changer for me to try to get, I'm not as naturally deliberate as Noralee is. So that was very helpful for me. And I think one that I was reflecting on for preparing for this, actually, was one of those books you pick up in an airport back when you picked up books, and there were airports that you traveled through. But it was by Susie Welch, and it was called 10-10-10. And I just thought it was a great book, especially for moms, because it says, make your decisions based on what's going to happen in 10 minutes, 10 months, 10 years. And I know I read that book at a very good time for me when I was having to make tough decisions about it. It felt like work was really noisy, and I had very small children at home. And so that helped me, going back to your comment about, did you ever feel guilty? That book really helped me see there was more options there than I gave myself room to believe. And I had to decide which was the thing that was going to matter in 10 years when it came to my children. And if it was going to matter in 10 years, you better find a solution so you could be at the ballet recital or the whatever it was. But anyway, that book was, it's not a long read, but it's one that did stay with me.
Yeah, thank you for that, Joanne. I remember that book too. And that is such a good framework for us to use. So I want to make sure that I, allow an opportunities for the audience to ask questions. So please, if you have something I haven't touched on, go ahead and throw it in the chat. I'm monitoring the chat right now myself. I have lots more questions, so I'll keep going. But if there is something that you are interested in, please let me know. I wanted to pick up on something you talked about, Noralee, in terms of the book, Give and Take and Networking. And I want to maybe focus a little bit more on communication. And can you tell us, has your style changed over the years in terms of how you communicate, and as you've progressed into higher leadership, what should we know? Tell us, give us some tips on communication and what we can do to be better at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I learned something just in the last couple of years that I think really did change my focus on communication. And it was someone brought to my attention a study, and I'm going to get this directionally correct, but that, and this is maybe one of the things that, again, not, an absolute rule, but I think looking back on my career, I focused a lot on what I was going to say, like just research the heck out of what am I going to say and make sure I know that topic cold. And this research said that in your career, it's only 30% about what you're saying, and it's 70% of how you say it. And that was super insightful for me and really pivoted me to focus more on my delivery of how I was going to communicate a particular piece of advice or a particular recommendation or my perspective on a business point. That it's about how you present your ideas. People, only 30%. It was kind of deflating when you think about the hours and hours you put into preparing, when really you should have been practicing your delivery. So that communication tip was really did turn my thinking when I prepare for things now.
Wonderful advice. Thank you. Joanne, how about you? What is your advice for communicating, particularly in your work settings and as you've gone, higher up in work, boards, that sort of thing?
I think what Noralee says really resonates, because I think when you're at more junior positions, you're there to convey information. You're there to present something. I think as you get more and more senior, you realize you're there to draw out information. You're there to test unconscious bias, to what are the underpinning, assumptions that have gone into this decision. And so your effectiveness at asking questions becomes more important, and formulating a question that's going to lead to the right kind of conversation that gets you to a good outcome. And as I watch the directors, boards of directors that I've been around, the best directors are the ones that don't speak very often. They take a lot in. And when they ask that question, it's like why didn't I think of that moment where that was the perfect question to really press the issue forward. So I think I've really focused, I've become a student of good questions. I try to make a list of what's a really good provocative question, what's the style in which the question was asked, and even timing, what's the right moment to bring that to the table or into the room.
Thank you. We do have a question from the chat. You talked about the networking. So one of our participants is wondering how to find a sponsor or build on those relationships. And either of you, if you want to respond, how to find a sponsor.
Why don't you go ahead, Nora?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had a magic pill just to say that's how you do it. I think the biggest thing is to watch for people who will have an opportunity in an area that you think you can contribute or want to build out. You do have to ask for, you have to ask for opportunities that are maybe a more challenging role, because if you can execute on those more difficult files, first of all, you may find that you're the only one putting up your hand to solve a difficult problem. And you have to be a little careful with that. But when I look back on how did I get, I didn't go out intentionally to get sponsors. But what I did do, I think, is intentionally look for opportunities where I could prove myself in a unique or different way, meaning someone else wasn't putting up their hand. And when you deliver a result that was a difficult problem to solve, you get that sponsorship because you're making their life easier. You're solving a problem. So I think you have to look for places where you can really contribute. And then, I think the sponsorships come from that.
Yeah, I'd maybe add on to that a little bit of it's a little bit of good fortune. And I don't know if this question is in the context of a company or just a student leaving university and heading into the work world. But in either case, I think getting out there and building a breadth of building a broad network, and sometimes you need a bigger volume of contacts for that, mentor or sponsor to emerge. So I think take the opportunities that are presented to you, make networking part of what you spend time on, join organizations that are focused on your level of your career, and start to foster that as part of the piece of your pie chart. I think that's something people overlook sometimes, especially early on, that building relationships and networks is a part of business, and it's a really valuable and enjoyable part of business.
Thank you. And there's another question. I think it's related to building these opportunities in this network. The question was, they're looking for opportunities to volunteer on various boards with limited experience, yet 15 years industry experience. Where do you start? How do you how do you find these opportunities?
Yeah, I get this question quite a bit. I was involved in the Institute of Corporate Directors, and we often, get that, how do I get my foot in the door? And I would say that, again, volunteering on boards. So I take from the question, it could be a not-for-profit, or it could be Crown Corps that really are they're not maybe volunteer, but very they're not the same as a for-profit board. My advice would be to make sure you're trying to find opportunities, first of all, that you would have a passion for, and that you have some experience that would be valuable to that board. And if it is in the not-for-profit space, but you're trying to build board experience, make sure it's something that has operational or governance oversight, not just fundraising. Because I think a lot of people get into a volunteer board situation and find that it's a fundraising board as opposed to really developing your skills as a board member. Because what you want to do, I think, is build your, as Joanne said, when you transition from a 15 years of industry experience where you're a doer, when you move into a board position, you're testing your ability to provide oversight as opposed to being the actual doer. So you want to bring that breadth of experience to that oversight role, but look for opportunities where you could be strategic. So if you've got either Crown Corps or not-for-profit companies that are going through some kind of transformational change, those are often good opportunities to get in there and test your ability to provide governance and oversight on strategy.
Thank you. Wonderful. Joanne, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I think that was a very, very complete answer. I would echo that advice.
Okay, I have another one here. What is a scenario where you have seen your perspective as a woman or women impact a change in decisions that are being made by other leaders? So you're bringing that female perspective to change decisions. Have you had any experience in this?
I'll start that one. It's an interesting question, because I have to say I don't, the question we had earlier about bringing your whole self to work. Being a female is only one aspect, obviously, of any of us. So it's hard to distinguish where it was being a female, whether it was being from a small town, whether it was being a mother, whether it was, what was it that changed the course of the conversation. I definitely think having a female style and approach in a conversation, I'd like to think that I keep kind of a tempered tone in a conversation. I think my style is to make sure everybody feels heard. I don't know that I can think of a specific example where being a female changed the course of a discussion. Certainly there's some, I think, where being a mother may be more sensitive to parenting issues. Yeah, it's interesting. It's what I actually debate a lot within myself, is what's the role that I play as a female leader to mentor young female leaders. And it feels like it's come such a long way in the period of our career. It's still ways to go, but when we started at law firms, you couldn't wear pantsuits. Like, women were expected to wear dresses or skirts, and it's come a long way in the 30 years we've been in the profession. And so I think it's going to continue to develop. And I hope we define ourselves not by a singular feature, but by all of who we are and what we bring. So
thank you.
Kind of a generic answer, but I
loved it. And one thing you said that struck me as quite female is that you look for opportunities to make sure that others are heard. I think that speaks to a different approach in leadership than perhaps what we would consider to be typically more of a masculine, command center. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, maybe, and I'll just add a couple of maybe recent examples where I think just bringing a different perspective to the conversation. One very recent, as we talk about what does the return to the corporate office look like, and how much flexibility should corporations, put into the new future of the workplace. And I think, that perspective of trying to watch for systemic issues that women deal with, is a perspective that while many of our male colleagues will have that empathetic view, I think we have, and I have in the conversation at Nutrien, looked for opportunities for how does the future of the workplace look to provide better flexibility or better opportunity, fair opportunity for people who are more their role in the household is one that those systemic challenges reveal themselves. The other is in the D&I conversation around, and this was a year or so back, but people wondering why gender was such a focus of attention for women on boards and women in senior roles, and why isn't there a broader perspective of diversity? And of course, we're very much in that conversation now. But I piped up in one conversation and said, well, when you are looking for diversity or minority perspectives on your executive team or on your team and in your board, I don't see women as a minority. We are 50% of the population, and we're 50% of, maybe more, of the educated population. So I thought that it was a good place to start in the diversity and inclusion discussion.
Yes, thank you. So we're just over 3:30, and I wondered if you'd mind taking one more question. It's a good, and we have a lot of students who've come online today, and it is, what advice do you have for young women who are transitioning from university to the work world? And let's maybe end with that one, because I'm interested to hear what you might say. So go ahead, Joanne. Advice for the young audience members.
Sure. Yeah. I think whether it's just entering the workforce or any of us, enjoy every stage that you're at. Really just soak in every opportunity that you're given at this entry point. as my own career as an example, take risks, but expect that they come with a lot of hard work. That if you feel like you can make a difference and you can learn something, fully evaluate that opportunity. Don't think that there's one single path to get you where you want to go. I would say always have, I call it the North Star, always have your North Star, always have a guidance, like a bit of a plan for yourself as to where you're going. So my choices were not random. I always knew that I wanted to be a general counsel at a complex organization. And so my choices were always made in service of that. So yeah, work hard, take opportunities, build the networks, stay close to your friends, look after your health. I mean, all the stuff your mom would tell you, I tell my own daughter, but also enjoy it, really enjoy it. And do something you love. Do something you love, because you're going to spend a lot of time at work. So make sure you love it.
Thank you. Noralee.
All great advice, and certainly the part about enjoying where you are at the moment, because being mindful, because you don't want to rush life away. I think that's a really important point that Joanne gave, because you're here, and don't rush that part of your career, because there's lots of time to get where you want to go. But coming back to some of the key themes, that I tried to mention, be intentional. As Joanne said, her decisions weren't random. You can influence your career. So be intentional. Know what the best version of yourself is, so you have that North Star. Be curious and courageous. So ask questions, take on challenging roles. Believe and bet on yourself. That's sort of what, I think Joanne was talking about. I think sometimes people coming out of university think that they have to get on a linear path, and the traditional path. And I think, as Joanne said, take risks, but I think the non-traditional entrepreneurial route, small business is so important, and will be very important in getting us out of, the economic, situation that, and there's lots of opportunity for entrepreneurial thinking. And I don't know if women really believe in themselves for developing.
I guess I'll just keep it running.
And so
I don't have to leave a meeting, so.
So anyway, think about betting on yourself in non-traditional roles. You don't have to follow a linear path.
Thank you. Wonderful advice. I wrote that down. Believe and bet on yourself. Really nice. Well, Joanne and Noralee, thank you. It was truly wonderful to get an inside peek at your worlds and to learn more about your celebrations and challenges throughout your careers. And we thank you from the Edwards School of Business for taking time out of your schedules to come and be with us today. And Noralee, we look forward to you coming back to Saskatoon. And the Edwards School of Business would love to host you at any time. We have multiple classes and multiple events throughout the years that we would just absolutely love to have you part of. So thank you again, everyone. And thank you to our guests and audience that came today to be with us. So have a wonderful afternoon.